weather enthusiasts. I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot to discuss, and man, what an update we have for you today. The tropical wave that's currently over Africa, right below where my camera is on the eastern side of the Atlantic, that is the tropical wave we are watching as it potentially heads towards the Caribbean and Florida and rapidly develops as it gets closer to those areas. So we are going to want to pay attention to that very closely. But before we get into the video, I am going to be changing a few things up. Primarily, instead of looking at the NHC and then the satellite and then the conditions and then the models, we're going to switch it up and we're going to go ahead and go straight into the models and then talk about the conditions afterwards. So let me know in the comments down below if you like that format better, and I'll make adjustments to make the content better as well. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive right into it right here. Alright, we're going to go ahead and start off and talk about these areas of interest tagged by the National Hurricane Center. There's the yellow area, that's the 10% off the coast of the Carolinas right there, and we have Invest 96L that is currently over parts of the main development region, expected to potentially develop in the Atlantic Basin. I'm going to be honest with you guys, in terms of what's happening with the 10% over here close to North Carolina, that's not really going to really develop at this current point. I don't really see it anymore. It's moving into more and more unfavorable conditions. And in terms of Invest 96L, I'm becoming less and less confident that that's also going to develop as well. We'll still pay attention to those just in case. It's just at this current point, I don't expect either of those to really do too much, but we'll still keep an eye on it. But ultimately, let's go ahead and read the advisories out just to kind of get a general glimpse of what's going on. So here's what we got to start with. A weak area of low pressure located a couple hundred miles off the coast of North Carolina is producing a few disorganized showers and thunderstorms. Development of the system, if any, is expected to be slow to occur over the next day or so, while it moves northeastward at 10 to 15 miles per hour. The low is likely to merge with a front over the weekend, causing its chance for tropical development to end. 10% chance of formation in the next 48 hours and 7 days. I'm not very confident that's going to really do too much. So we'll go ahead and read Invest 96L's region right here. A tropical wave located over the central tropical Atlantic appears to have minimal shower activity. Development of the system also appears unlikely during the next day or two due to surrounding dry air, but environmental conditions are forecast to become more conducive in a few days. A tropical depression could form during the early to middle part of next week, while the system moves northwestward to northward over the central tropical and subtropical Atlantic. 40% chance in the next 7 days. That is down from 60% yesterday. So we'll have to pay attention to that. We'll keep close tabs on it. But now let's go ahead and dive into the main meat of the video today. Starting off right here, this is the tropical wave that's coming off the coast of Africa right here. This is producing a lot of convection. It's still starting to come off of Africa right now, but it's producing a lot of convection. There's a lot of vorticity associated with it that we're going to want to pay attention to. And this is probably the healthiest tropical wave we have seen all season right here. And as soon as this comes off the coast of Africa, we'll have a better idea of what's exactly going to be happening with that. But this is a very large, a very robust wave that's coming off right here, still producing convection across the broad right here, but we'll have to pay attention to it as it continues to come off the coast. There's also going to be something that we're going to want to pay attention to, because this is a really strong wave, and this is going to kind of fluctuate with the models a little bit. I do want to emphasize that very quickly to you guys, because normally when we see that kind of stuff, we have what's known as the splashdown effect, where we have a lot of model support initially, then it comes off the coast of Africa, it loses its convection, loses some steam, and then it ultimately starts to kind of wane. The models wane temporarily, and then they jump back up. That's known as the splashdown effect, where tropical waves come off the coast of Africa, they weaken, it screws with the models for a few runs, and then they come back up. However, what we might be seeing this time is kind of the opposite effect, and Andrew Austin Adler was actually talking about this. He posted this on Twitter, and we can go ahead and show you that as well. This is what we got from the big man himself, the AAA dude, right here. It's time to put up or shut up for the model guidance as the next wave of interest begins to emerge off Africa. We've seen this happen quite a few times already this season as support for these features fluctuates post splashdown. It's worth noting that the evidence spin associated with the broad wave envelope could aerodynamically inflate model intensities in the short term. That is very critical. So instead of maybe seeing something where, a splashdown effect kind of weakens model support, it may accidentally accelerate it too much, where before we were thinking of like maybe it's going to develop down the road. Instead, it's going to develop right away because of that vorticity bias that Andrew Austin Adler and I have been looking at. So that's something you're going to want to pay attention to moving forward. But in the meantime, there are some other things that we want to get over and get towards as well. So let's go ahead now and show you the European run. We'll start showing model runs going forward, and we'll go ahead and start with that. So this is what we have for the European. This is the 0Z. We'll show you the 12Z in a little bit as well. But here's your 0Z run at this current point in time. 0Z European is pretty interesting. Having the system come off the coast of Africa right here, starting to take its time organizing and developing. Has a low pressure system trying to organize as it moves through the main development region. It kind of takes its time, like I said, and then as it approaches the Lesser Antilles, it does start to organize a bit more. But the European, interestingly, this run does have it moving a bit further up to the west, but it does have it strengthening up to a 992, 991, strengthens up to hurricane strength as it approaches the United States right there, and heads potentially towards, at least according to the 0Z, heads towards New England right here. I'm going to be brutally honest when I say this to you guys right here. I don't think this kind of scenario is exactly what's going to be happening based on what I'm seeing with the bridges, the troughs, and all of that stuff. But at least what we can tell you right here is going out to 7 days right here, you do have that starting to organize and develop over here in the Western MDR as it's making its approach towards the Lesser Antilles. So you're going to want to pay attention to that. We're also looking at least according to other model runs as well, a stronger than average ridge that's going to be building up. We're going to be looking at stronger than average 500 millibar heights. That's going to drive this system further up to the west as well. So you're going to want to pay attention to that as well. But ultimately, the models really haven't slowed down with this development at all. And the fact that we've been seeing this for the last 4, 5, 6 days consistently has been pretty concerning, to say the very least. We've been seeing this over and over and over and over, the same scenario firing up with this, that you're going to have to watch this, and I'm going, okay, this is something to pay attention to. Because before, if it was like a day and then at weekend, I was like, okay, maybe watch this. This is still a little bit out there. Now that it's been going on for so long, I'm going, okay, this looks legit. We're going to want to take this a bit more seriously than we did previously, and that's something you're going to want to pay attention to, and we'll keep you updated on as well. And before we get to the 12Z European, one thing I do want to say is the fact that we've been seeing this consistency for quite some time is pretty concerning. The fact that it's not slowing down is something to pay attention to. Let's go ahead and show you the 12Z over here, and we'll go ahead and update this to 12Z today, and we'll go ahead and go to this time frame. We'll start about 3 days out, and then we'll get there. I can't really go to the I can't really zoom out of this, unfortunately. I mean, I can go to the East Atlantic to kind of track this a little bit, but we'll have to bear with me. So this is what we have for this is what we have for 3 days out. You have that low starting to close up a little bit, and then, okay, this is frozen up a little bit. We'll have to refresh this real quickly. There we go. So this is what we have for 96 hours out. It's still an open wave as it's moving towards the Lesser Antilles and through the Eastern Atlantic. It starts to close itself out 5 days out from now, and then as we start to get towards the Western Atlantic over here, it's starting to close itself out more, starting to organize more. You have your LLC, your low-level circulation, and then it really starts to organize into tropical depression status as it approaches the Lesser Antilles right here. This actually starts off as a relatively broad tropical wave and a relatively broad system, a relatively large system, and a pretty robust one to that as well, which is why this is going to organize so fast. And then as we get to 192 hours out, we're already at tropical storm strength, and this is impacting the Lesser Antilles, impacting Dominica, Guadalupe, Antigua and Barbuda, Anguilla, those areas, St. Thomas, other Virgin Islands as well. And then as you get to 9 days out, boom, we're already at hurricane strength according to the European. This is really escalating really fast. Right here, and then as we get to 240 hours out, it's continuing to intensify, although I am a little bit curious as to wondering why it's so lopsided at this current point, because a lot of the convection is on its eastern side, which I do think is kind of interesting, and there's not really any shear or anything like that in that region, so we'll have to pay attention to that a little bit more. But then 11 days out, this is already starting to consolidate a bit more, Category 2 status as it's approaching the Bahamas. And then 288 hours out, it starts to make that turn towards the southeastern United States, potentially towards South Carolina due the potential weakening of the ridge according to this model right here. The system also starts approaching the Carolinas as well. And then as we start to get to 14 days out, it moves further up to the north, kind of off the coast of North Carolina. And we can go ahead and zoom in on this as well as it's starting to fall. It starts to kind of head further up into the northwestern Atlantic, heads along the coast of Virginia, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, the Mid-Atlantic. I'm going to be brutally honest when I say this. This is 2 weeks out. Nothing is set in stone. Don't go out there on social media and start typing, oh my goodness, we're looking at a mid-Atlantic hurricane now. We got to watch out for this. No, this is 2 weeks out. This isn't set in stone. This is highly variable at this current point. Anything past 168 hours or 7 days out should not be taken at face value, because of the highly uncertain phase of these models that we are presenting to you at this current point. Sorry, I'm stammering a little bit. But what we can show you is go back to the Western Atlantic and go back to 168 hours out to see what's happening. Look at this. You have your tropical depression development already starting to take place over here. And this is something that we're going to want to pay attention to for quite some time here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel, because as more of these models start to come in, they've been, number one, very consistent over the last 4, 5, 6 days at this current point, which is already pretty concerning to say the very least. And number two, it's been kind of spitting out the same general scenario with tropical development happening over the western MDR, and then entering the southwestern Atlantic, really rapidly intensifying over there, and then starting to impact potentially the Bahamas, the U.S., the Caribbean, and all of those areas as well. So that's something we're going to want to watch. But in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and move on to some other models like the GFS, the CMC, and the Icon, because I want to go ahead and break those down as well, because there is some interesting information I do want to go ahead and share with you guys over there. So this is what we have for your GFS. This is the 12Z GFS at this current point. I have a few issues with this run of the GFS, and I'll go ahead and show you the biggest one by far. So we start off right here. The system not at 24 hours out and then 48 hours out is already developed. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not going to happen. And the reason why this run is going for this kind of development this quick is because of a vorticity bias in the initialization of the run. Because there is a lot of vorticity in this wave that we're dealing with right here. There's a lot of rotation. There's a lot of vorticity, like I said, and we can go ahead and show you that. This is at 850 right here. Here's what we have. There's a huge amount of vorticity with this wave, but there's also a very large vorticity bias over here off the coast of Liberia over here, and that's what ultimately allows for this development to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, this is kind of the similar situation that we had back in June with hurricanes coming off of vorticity from Venezuela because of the wildfires. That's not going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. It's not going to develop that quickly, and the reason the GFS is even considering this is, like I said, because of the vorticity bias. So with that being said, and we can go ahead and move on, I still want to go ahead and show you this run just to kind of see how it pans out, because the rest of the run I don't necessarily have an issue with. What I have a problem with is the initial development. The track I don't necessarily have the biggest issue with, per se. It's just the intensity that I have a problem with, especially in the MDR. We're not going to see a hurricane in the main development region, most likely. we're likely going to not see hurricane strength if this happens until we get closer to the Lesser Antilles or the southwestern Atlantic. I want to make that very clear. But even still, as the system heads towards the Bahamas and those regions right there, still a very powerful system right here. And then another issue that I have with this literally moves through the Florida-Cuba Strait right here, enters the Gulf, intensifies to a 932 millibar system, and makes landfall in Texas. That, ladies and gentlemen, is why we cannot rely on models 2 weeks out. This particular reason right here, because they are so variable that we can't take these at face value. Remember, the 12Z European had this moving over the mid-Atlantic. The 12Z GFS wants us to enter the Gulf and impact Texas and Louisiana. That's not going to happen at this current point. Heck, I don't think either of those scenarios are going to happen at this current point. But we'll have to see what happens moving forward. This is the kind of issues that we're seeing with these runs. We're seeing overly aggressive GFS runs and somewhat aggressive model runs at the 12Z because of the vorticity that's coming off of Africa. There is a lot of vorticity, don't get me wrong, but that vorticity, a lot of it is very broad and it's not really tight. It's a broader area of it, and you're not going to see a spin up. You're not going to see a strong spin up off of one area of that the GFS kind of probably did not render correctly. So with that being said, that's your 12Z GFS right there for you, ladies and gentlemen. And now we can go ahead and show you the Canadian and the Icon, which in my opinion are a lot more realistic. Canadian is pretty interesting, although it is somewhat conservative from what I've seen before. The Canadian takes its time to organize and develop until it gets to the southwestern Atlantic, and then from then on out, it starts to close itself off, become a tropical depression, then tropical storm, and then moves through the Bahamas after 10 days out. The CMC has been having trouble initializing this as well. They're going to need to take some time to catch up with this system, but we'll keep you updated on that here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But now we can go ahead and show you the Icon run. Icon is kind of iconic for kind of showing this system developing right here. Icon has it organizing and developing in the main development region, and then moving towards the Lesser Antilles. Similar strength to what the European is actually wanting to go for as well. So I do find that kind of interesting, to say the very least. So with all of that going on, that's something you're going to want to keep in mind, and you're going to want to pay attention to as well. Very quickly, I do want to show you some conditions before we wrap up this video and kind of neatly wrap this up in a nice little bow, because you're seeing all these models, right? And you're probably going, Patrick, what are the conditions with this? You showed models, but where are the conditions? Well, we already know the water temperatures and the OHC is pretty piping hot. I'm not going to go over those right now. What I am going to go over is the wind shear and the dry air. Here's the wind shear for you guys at this current point. This is the Europeans 0Z wind shear. In 72 hours, let me go ahead and show you this, and we'll go ahead and give our first stop. The wind shear across the main development region and the southwestern Atlantic, where the system is forecast to be moving, collapses completely. And it's not like a one-time thing where it stays for a couple of days, then it starts to get better. No. This stays pretty consistent throughout the entire run. You have very low wind shear for this system to move through, and it'll make it a lot easier for it to develop. Matter of fact, we can show you that right here as this system continues to move further to the west. And yes, you have some quote-unquote shear to the west of it, but that's partly due to the storm structure and partly due to the storm producing those winds right there. That's not exactly wind shear over there, quote-unquote. So that's what we have for the wind shear. Moist air very quickly, since we are running out of time right now. Moist air, there is a little bit of dry air to the north of it, but that's easily going to get mixed out according to all of these model runs right here, and that's something you're going to want to pay attention to, especially as you head towards the latter part of this run. These are all things that we're going to want to watch. We're going to continue to keep you updated on everything, and we'll keep you updated on all the other threats in the tropics here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close the video out right here. I really hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you are new. The goal, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. If you want to help out, hang out, or ask us some questions, feel free to join the Storms United Discord server. The link to that is in the end screen. I think we would all really appreciate it if you came and joined. It's a great thing to do. We cover Tropics a lot. We're talking about this, and it shows you that you support the channel, you support the brand. We really appreciate if you came on. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.